Hello, this is National Chess Master R. Rats continuing my video series on the team match between my video lessons group and the team from CARPE DIEM at chess.com. And this was played on board 129. We have low 1700s pdorsey versus high 1500s. And let's have a look, see what happens in this game. Okay, so not too much going on here. B3 seems a little slow, but it's not anything that Black can take advantage of other than develop his pieces. And the game takes on a very, very symmetrical and level position here when the tension is soon released in the center. A3 seems a little slow. White should just castle. Maybe he doesn't want this. Maybe he wants to try to break later with B4, or he's trying to keep this knight out of B4. Not quite sure. But Black just develops it again. Nothing Black can really take advantage of other than to secure equality. And that's what happens. The game takes on a very, very level symmetrical tone here just in a few minutes or a few moves. Okay, so now Black is able to break in the center with D5. This is one way to go against a Moxie bind, because in effect that's what White has here. One way to play against the Moxie bind is to usually break with B5 first, but due to the position and the alignment of some of the white pieces, Black can actually break D5 now. The threat is to take and win a piece on D4. So White needs to react here and release his bind. That center just evaporates, and pretty much there it is. And we now have a very extremely level position. Both sides are down to 5 pawns with 3 symmetrical open files. Both sides can occupy those files. There's no pawn majority. There's no pawn weaknesses. Matter of fact, this is almost the type of position a couple of grandmasters would just say, hey, you want to draw? And then they would go on and play their next game. Anyway, Black plays knight a5. And this is where White, like I say, White should have been happy with an equal position. And instead, it's hard to believe how the white pawn structure is going to be absolutely ruined here in just a few short moves. The correct move to play is just put the bishop on e2, and the game's even. Instead, White plays a4, and I really don't understand the point of that move. And number one, it gives up the bishop pair. But number two, it weakens these two white pawns. They're now isolated. Now, bishops thrive in open positions. And this bishop has this wonderful diagonal here. And, of course, this bishop has, even though it's blocked by a knight, and it's countered by this bishop on b2, the bishops have scope. So this is not a type of position that favors the knights. It's one that favors the bishops. So all of a sudden, Black has an advantage here. Black also has an outpost, c5. And he's going to be transferring his knight there in just a moment. And now he opens up the diagonal for this bishop, like I was saying. And showing its power. Now the knight just hops back to c5, and it can't be evicted from that square by a pawn. White could oppose knights to get rid of it, but let's see what happens. Okay, White develops his rook, threatening potential discoveries with his knight, so the queen beats a retreat out of there. And now knight b5, threatening a fork, but that's easy to deal with. But one drawback with this move is Black has a very nice move here, and that's give up his bishop pair, give it back, and just capture this knight. White doesn't really have time to throw this knight into here because of queen c6. And now, as I was saying, it's hard to believe that just in a few moves the white pawn structure would be ruined. And here we have it. It is absolutely ruined. Every pawn that White owns is doubled or isolated. Every pawn that White owns is weak. That's 5 weaknesses in one position. It only takes 2 to win a chess game. Well, in this case, there's 5. Okay? So strategically, Black is winning winning this game because White hasn't been careful. Come back here. White hasn't been careful with his pawn structure. Okay, so Queen E7 stops the threat, and now the knight's eyeballing a new square. Can't go there yet, but it's eyeballing it. It's keeping an eye on C5. It's opening up the C file in case Black wants to put pressure on C4. And King H1. I mean, not if this pawn structure was intact, this is not a move White would be playing. Does it really help him now to even play that move? What's he trying to get off this diagonal for? You know, a natural move would have been to play a rook, move a rook to the D file or E file, or maybe even consider doubling rooks. Anything would be a more active move, but White's just doesn't have a plan, and now Black puts pressure on C4. Well, maybe that's the point of King H1, to put a rook on a file where it can't really threaten anything. You know, there's no threat down here. But we'll see what he has in mind here in a minute. Okay, Queen B4 with an immediate threat, and White activates his knight, and it's at this point that White doesn't like what's going on. He's trying to defend this pawn on C4. That White just jettisons the knight. He had to do something else. Queen E4 at least pins this rook so it can't take the knight, but the knight's still in trouble. And Black will just collect this pawn on A4 and go up a pawn, and White still has all those weak pawns. But you know, White's just basically self-destructed, and his game is just going downhill rapidly. But to give up a piece without a fight, you know, is just tantamount to resigning. And you know, now Black's just up a clear piece, just like that. And now he attacks the rook, but Black saves it. And now Black's happy to liquidate, and there's another free pawn. Okay, so now Black's just up a piece and a pawn, and White has nothing. Comes and attacks the queen, attacks the rook, and Black just defends everything, F7 included, and attacks the queen again, and White steps back but walks into a pin, and rather than play a rook down, White decided to go ahead and resign. So you know, just the lesson here is you can't just give up your position in an equal game like this. You just can't create weaknesses. Let's look at that again. When White opted to allow his pawns to be split up on the queen side. Again, you know, the back ranks are exact match, okay? Look at that. See? Exact match. So there's no development advantage to speak of. Both sides have 4 minor pieces developed. B3 is a little weak if you retreat the bishop, but it's not something White can take advantage of. You know, the knight on D4 is covered 3 times. This knight is anchored there. There's nothing Black can do to really improve his position. Let's see. Suppose Black tries Queen D5. Okay, hey, I got minor pressure on this pawn. Minor. You know, you're defending it twice. I'm tying your knight down here. Well, White just develop a rook or something. Okay, let's go develop this rook. Okay, and if Black develops a rook, let's see. How about if we develop our queen? Okay, I mean, like I was saying, this is the kind of position a couple of grandmasters can just shake hands and move on to their next game. But you know, weakening his own pawn structure was tantamount to suicide. White had no winning chances on the board after that because Black doesn't have a weakness himself. Okay, So let's load up the other game and see what happened here. Okay, back it up. Okay. Now knight d7 seems a little slow, but it's not anything that white can really take direct advantage of. And a3 seems slow. What's the point? Just to stop a pin? I mentioned in a number of these videos about players moving their rook pawns up to keep a piece out. Just develop your bishop. Okay. If bishop b4, if bishop b, let me get rid of that a pawn. Bishop d3. If bishop b4, just castle. The pin's broken. You're perfectly fine. If black wants to take your knight, let him. You're doing it without playing a3, and you're keeping the a3 square open for your bishop. Okay, so a3 it's okay, but it doesn't really help white's game. Okay, so now he plays the right move, and they both castle. But it's at this point that I think black just totally missed the thread of what's going on here. The best move for black is probably... Well, let me show you what he plays. Okay, he plays knight g4. Now, this move really logistically makes no sense. All it seems to do is tie this knight down to protecting h2. White can't play knight e1, although white wouldn't want to play knight e1 because he's going to drop this pawn down here, maybe even more. Knight takes. Hey, look, the rook's trapped. Okay. Black is not developed yet. This queen side is not in the game. If black's trying to attack white's king, that's fine. But what's he going to attack it with? Okay. Is he planning to play queen c7? And white's just going to end up kicking it out of there. And even if black does get any kind of attack going, he's losing time. He's losing time in this, and white will just develop his pieces. And again, black doesn't have enough forces to do this. So knight g4 really doesn't make sense. But here's the plan. Okay, take this. Okay. Now white needs to take back. Now what's interesting is black has a couple of breaks here, that the kind of move he wants to play. One is e5 and the other is c5. Let's look at them both. Okay, e5. This opens up the diagonal for this bishop. Okay, because black has shut it in. That's the first thing about e5. If white takes, and there's no rule saying white has to take, but if white takes, I'm just going to simplify here. The game looks once again, the game looks very level. If either side captures the queen, you develop the opponent's rook. But in this case, white doesn't really have a great dark squared bishop. Okay, and I think, and also for what it's worth, black has an outside pawn majority, the 3 pawns against 2. Okay. This means eventually black may create a pass pawn on the queen side, and it could possibly divert the white king over to watch it while the black king penetrates on the king side. That's the idea of a pawn majority. Now white didn't have to liquidate on e5, but let's see, what else can white do? Well, let's develop. Let's see. If I play b4, I'm shutting my bishop in, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway, rather than play b3. That'll keep a3 weak. Well, now black takes. Okay. Now if white takes, he activates his bishop and he plays with an isolated queen pawn, and black should be fine out of that. Knight b6, knight d5 is trying to achieve a blockade at some point. And if white takes with the knight, he can still play knight e5, tempo the bishop, and now, hey, look, let's try this move just for the fun of it, because we can. You want to play f3, weaken e3. Looks like black's getting his pieces out. Okay, and the other choice was to play c5, and now white doesn't have to take, but he can. Now this once again leads to like in the other game, leads to a symmetrical pawn structure. This bishop still isn't developed, but then neither is this one. Maybe white will play here. Well, now black can go ahead and play this knight to e4. Okay, and bishop b2, maybe b6, queen e2, bishop b7. Let's pin that critter. This bishop on d6. Now, queen e7. Looks like a relatively even game. Okay, but knight g4 is just premature. It's just wrong. It doesn't really help black's game. So white makes a threat. Hey, I'm gonna threaten your pawn on h2 or h7 rather. So now black swings this knight over, and white just kicks that knight out of there. And look, he's got to go back. Now white attacks that bishop, comes back, and bang, look, a threat. White's trying to play g4 and win a pawn. This is the point where black just went bonkers, so to speak. He needed to, move this knight somewhere, maybe back to e8. Then if g4 comes, you can occupy f5. But he goes, like I said, he goes bonkers here. He makes a sacrifice. So here at move 13, black is getting the attack he wants, but it's coming at the price of a piece. And once again, black doesn't have the development in order to conduct this attack. And actually, white is the one that's going to get the attack, not black, because immediately there's a capture here, and white just saves his bishop. Doesn't want to have to deal with complications where it gets trapped and he has to sacrifice back, and the whole king side opens up. But black has given up a full piece for just a pawn, and dubious compensation. As I said, white is the one that's going to get the attack here. And here comes black trying to activate everything. He's threatening e4, got this bishop into play. This one's ready to help out, but white's the one in charge here. Here comes a check, and I guess black needs to play knight h6, but then his attack is pretty much going to be over. But he comes here with the king, and all of a sudden white comes up with a crafty little move, check. And at this stage, black resigned because white actually has forced mate here. King h8 is forced, and you might want to try to solve it. Pause the video. Okay, you've come back. There's a little theme here. You play bishop check. Okay, that uncovers a check with the rook. Now, let's look at the alternatives. You can take the king, or the king can take the bishop, and you walk right into mate. That's one theme. If you block the check with the knight, you run right into queen h7 check, mate, right? Okay. What else is left? You want to block with the queen? Well, you take the queen off. And no matter what black does, he has two moves. He can take the rook in either way, but neither of those stop queen h7 mate. So there you have it. Okay, so congratulations to pdorsey, and I hope you enjoyed these games. I'll be back for another one as soon as I can get it analyzed, and then we'll review it with you. Thanks so much for your time. Bye now.